For me, it's pretty obvious stuff in many ways. Not to sound clever, but I think because of a certain ideology that I'll talk about, we've blinded ourselves to some sort of, I would say, obvious realities if we were just to contemplate. So that's roughly what's going to happen. I'll say something about myself, introduce myself. I'm a Muslim, but my videos are generally about happiness. Yeah, they're about happiness, but in a very wide sense of the word. So I even talk about economics and how to make a better world through economics and the environment. I largely talk about relationships, and it all stem from my understanding of Islamic teachings. So that's me. Claire, say something about yourself.
Well, I'm not Muslim, but I see Islam as the new moral and legal political system for the West, because what they have, which I call Christo liberalism, is crashing and burning. And I know they're going to be a bit difficult about accepting this, but I think when they eventually do, the way forward for them is clear, because they're basically very neurotic about so many things. They have so many problems and so many issues to do with identity, status, mental health, that the only thing that can sort them out is a new moral and legal political system. And I say it's going to be something called secular Quranism, which is based on the Quran actually, but interpreted by me, a non-Muslim but legally trained person, which I think will make it less frightening for them.
Hmm, cool. And this thing, I th- and I think what you've reminded me, and the little thing you just said there, is that when I'm talking about these ideas that I believe will promote happiness, um, one reason or one thing to back that up is that it works. There are so many things that Islam is being proved right on again and again. uh, some of the more obvious things that I've been talking about is, um, there's a trend towards not having children, and Islam solving that. And what I'm going to be talking about today is essentially mental health and social mental health, community mental health. And we seem to be failing on that in many ways and confused about that in many ways because we don't have clear guidelines, and Islam provides that and it provides answers. And so, I mean, the reason why you reminded me of that when you said that, because you said Christianity failing, therefore we need something else. The something else is Islam. But why Islam? Why Islam? Why not communism? Why not something else? I would say because it works. It's demonstrating it works. I mean, why did you pick Islam out of all
Well,
the things you could
because
have?
I have looked at other things. Well, communism is the um, converse of capitalism, because capitalism is basically saying that the people who own capital should rule, and communism is saying the people who own labor should rule. But they're both materialist ideologies. So it's all about, things that we can see and hold and wear and burn and eat and these are materialist ideologies that eventually make us unhappy, while Islam, on one hand, also acknowledges that we have material needs, but on the other hand, also acknowledges that we have spiritual needs. And I define spirituality as a desire for justice. So if we think the rules are fair enough, we're prepared to accept, the responsibilities that come with our status, our class, our sex, and do what we're supposed to do. As men or women, poor people or rich people. Poor people are expected to work, rich people are expected to give to charity, women are expected to give birth, men are supposed to provide for their women by marrying them and being good fathers to their children. And I guess these are things that a lot of people would find banal, but fundamentally, there is no escape if we want our group to continue in existence without being, invaded by others. And it seems to me Westerners are always complaining about, being sold down the river by their corrupt and incompetent politicians, and being
Hmm.
victimized by all the people who they invite in, particularly Muslims that they're frightened of.
Hmm.
But there is a kind of irony to you know in the situation, because it is only through watching, I guess, Muslims that they able to think, who come fresh off the boat but doing better than the indigenous already, that maybe gives them the idea that religion is the important, is the thing, is the wrapper that dignifies and protects groups of people. So you can't just say, "Oh, I'm just an atheist. I don't like anything. I don't believe in anything," and then expect people to take you seriously or protect you.
Hmm.
So even under liberal legislation, they protect Jews and Muslims and people of whatever religion against the indigenous who say they have none. And
Okay.
even they don't even protect Christianity, because the ruling classes themselves don't believe in it. So they have a problem about how they can relate to each other.
Right. Okay. I'm trying to put together some of the ideas you were just mentioning there. So you mentioned how the foreigners fresh off the boat are somehow doing better, and I would say that's probably something to do with Islam, some sort of identity and direction, which everybody else in the West is losing very quickly, and a couple of other ideas. But let's just jump into the ideas about fashion. And as usual, I will start with some verses of the Holy Quran and then discuss them with you. It'd be interesting to see what you say and what you think about them. So, starts off with this: say to the believing men that they restrain their eyes and guard their private parts, that is purer for them. Surely Allah is well aware of what they do. And then it says, and say to the believing women that they restrain their eyes and guard their private parts, and that they disclose not their natural and artificial beauty, except that which is apparent thereof, and that they draw their head coverings over their bosoms, and that they disclose not their beauty, save to their husbands, to their fathers, and some other people, and turn you all to turn you. I always forget to remove all the Shakespearean English from this translation, and turn you all together to Allah, O believers, that you may succeed. Let me summarize that in a few words. So it starts off with not just the fashion of what you should wear, but before that it says how you should control yourself. It's like saying you don't need to be victims of other people's choices. You control yourself, and then you work on yourself, which is your appearance, your clothes. And then the Quran says, interestingly, more things for women to do. So that's going to be an interesting part of the discussion. Why more things for women? Why do women have to cover up more? And then it not only says that, but it talks about artificial beauty. So we talk about makeup and things like that. So that'll be something we would discuss. So to start off with, I suppose let's discuss the first part of the verse and see what you think about this. So men and women um, control their eyes. Why is that important? That might not seem to be relevant to fashion directly, but I think it's part of the package that you control yourself. I would say that if you don't control yourself, because you become what's the word? Victim of your own
Appetites?
animalistic appetite. I like to describe it as animalistic appetites, I suppose, animalistic
Lusts?
instincts. Yeah, instincts. So the reason why I use animalistic is because the Quran talks about three stages of development, and the lowest stage is your animal self. Then there's a middle stage where you keep kicking yourself, like you're trying to do better, but you keep failing. And then there's a final stage where you're free from all these desires. You manage to figure it all out. So that's why I start with animalistic. You're just your base desires, and you need to. There's no point on one side. The things I'm going to be talking about, improving how you dress and things like that. Where on the other side, you've got no self-control. You need some sort of balance.
Or we can't walk around naked, so we have to wear clothes.
Well, that is the thing I'm coming to, which is your appearance. But before that, you have to have, even, let's say, if you dress, everybody in the world dresses incredibly well. If you are skulking at people and, shamelessly staring at people's breasts, even though people dress as modestly as they can, then it will have no benefit. So you need to fix your self control, your eyes first. And there's a lot of evidence that that's failing. I mean, that's not happening. For example, porn addiction is the extreme version of that, and the damage that's doing to society is incredible. I don't think people realize the damage it's doing to society. And I suppose that one thing it's doing to society is, first of all, it's destroying marriages. But even before that, people are not even getting married because they're accepting this 2D version of sex and reality. So it's all part of an important package. And I suppose this kind of takes me to where I'm roughly going with this. Where I'm going roughly with this, with all the fashion and all this kind of stuff, what's the point? Is to make a more stable and happy society where relationships flourish, where marriages flourish. And we've absolutely lost track of that because of an ideology that we've been fed over decades, which is freedom gives you happiness. So I've said a few things there. What do you think about that?
I can only remember your final
Sorry, I
statement,
said too
which is
much.
that
Yeah, go on. We're obsessed with freedom, and that's corrupted. That's turned us into animals. We want to be free at all costs to do anything we want, and it's turned us into animals. And then we're shocked that we can't maintain level relationships, or advanced relationships, I call them, like marriage. Marriage doesn't happen easily. You need to be an advanced being to maintain that. And
indeed.
yeah,
Because marriage is, if you think about it in legalistic terms, it is a contract of mutual enslavement, because husband and wife have a duty to each other and as well as their offspring. So they have
yeah,
certain responsibilities and duties that, maybe a lot of people are not that keen to perform. But particularly when they look around them and see more attractive people than the person that they've married. And to bring it back to fashion, fashion is supposed to make us attractive to members of the opposite sex. So there
yes.
is a kind of dual purpose. We know we can't walk around naked, so we have to wear clothes. While we're wearing clothes, we're going to make ourselves attractive to members of the opposite sex. Or even if we're not, even if we're already married, we still want to, convey certain ideas about ourselves, our status, our wealth, our, fashion sense, whatever, or brand loyalty. And that kind of thing. It
Yeah,
becomes a badge of identity.
yeah.
What we choose to wear and which designer we want to favor.
Yes, and I'm going to cover a lot of these things. About identity is incredibly important. I think we in the West have lost. I'm no longer in the West right now, but generally as a Westerner, we've lost our sense of identity because it's dissolved in this idea of freedom. So identity, I would argue, I've gone through some sort of this is something that's come to my mind, is that you identify yourself through your principles, what you're willing to sacrifice, not by, you can't really identify yourself by this idea that I can do anything I want. There's nothing that you can be proud of that identifies you that way. I don't know if that makes any sense. So
I think,
yeah.
yeah, Karen. Uh,
Yeah, so it's a bit like the British. We were having a conversation with your friend who came to the convention, the Ahmadi convention. We were talking about the British have lost identity. They've lost their identity because they stand for nothing no longer. They
because
used
they
to,
don't have a
yeah,
religion. I mean,
yes,
they
that's
still
true.
pretend it's Christianity, but it isn't because they don't believe in it.
Yeah, and there's different areas of identity as well. Like, are you a man or a woman? Like, do you dress like a man? And the appearance of a man by itself is not important, but the duties related to that, and to be proud of a man who provides for the children and protects and um, directs the family in a responsible way and things like that. These are things that really give you identity, and those are things I'm going to be talking about through appearance, and there are many other things like that. So yeah, go on. What were you going to say? Were you going to say something?
You were talking about all these different kinds of people, and I was thinking, if I were absolute dictator and I could make people wear exactly what I wanted, I could make them sort of wear men and women. Okay, you have boys and girls. They wear a certain thing up to a certain age. They become an adolescent. They wear something else, and then they become young men and women. They wear something else if they're single, and then they have the married person's garments, and then they have the widowed person's garments. They have the single. I don't know, because I was
Sure.
thinking that would be the perfect indicator of status
Hmm.
in society. So
I
you
think
don't have to.
there's actually a lot of that in Arab societies, but I think that's kind of maintained by women. So, for example, um, I remember my sister-in-law, when she wasn't married, she got to wear clothes with more shiny bits on or something. That was what my mother-in-law decided, and it kind of made it more obvious that she was single or something like that. I don't know. So there's a lot of that, and wearing a red scarf rather than a boring black scarf, you know, might indicate things like that you're
uh,
single still. So I think there's
right.
a lot of things, and even, yeah, I suppose even in the schools, um, in Jordan, in the normal government schools, all the girls wear green, the boys wear something else. I can't remember what they wear. My kids are going to go to a private school because they have to, so I don't really know the system for the government schools exactly. But anyway, so there is a lot of what you're saying. It's not far fetched at all, really. People wearing clothes according to
Their
something
age
that
and
just
status, and age
yes.
and marital status.
Yeah, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I'm going to be talking about the need for having a men wearing a beard and women wearing a headscarf. Why that massively increases happiness, and very briefly, because it identifies you as a Muslim, and if that identifies you as a person who cares. He says everybody is my brother and sister, therefore we can smile and say hello at each other, which is not possible in London, for example, where everybody's scared to make eye contact because they don't understand. They don't know by looking at them quickly what their moral philosophy is. But when you know their moral philosophy, i.e., Islam, and Islam means we're all brothers and sisters, then you can actually smile at each other and say hello to each other, which is normal in Jordan, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there are all sorts of values in having some sort of fashion. So I want to get past the first idea, but I haven't finished with the first idea, which is self-control of the eyes. So first of all, I talked about men who indulge in porn are twice as likely to get divorced as those who aren't addicted to porn. So that's, it's a very important thing to have self-control of the eyes. But women have an interesting parallel, which is Instagram. And they're always looking at other people and what they're up to. And they suffer from, what was the word I managed to get down social comparison anxiety. And I think there's a lot of that that's causing a lot of divorces. So most divorces are initiated by women. And from the stories I've heard, I get the sense that as women who are not happy, that they look at other people's lives, their fake lives, not the true stories, and they go, "I wish my marriage was better. I wish I had more stuff." Because they're constantly looking at Instagram and they're talking to their friends who also have a similar mindset, who are also looking at Instagram. And then they have a divorce with a plan to get loads more stuff, and they don't. So controlling your eyes um, can help you, work against this self-destructive, attitude of looking at things you shouldn't be looking at. What do you think about that? Do you think Instagram destroys marriages? Porn destroys marriages? Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I have heard it said that sometimes husband and wife are encouraged to look at erotica to improve their sex life, and um, I suppose fundamentally Instagram and all kinds of social media platforms that allow people to, you know, craft their image will create envy, and is intended to create envy, because it is showing off that, you went on a nice holiday, or your home is like this instead of like that. And um, that is the whole purpose of us displaying ourselves to
Hmm.
complete strangers, and people feel they have to do that now. And but the thing is, you don't have to buy into it. You can basically people will just use their social media platforms to post on the stuff that's most on their minds. So for me, I would just be talking about politics and not be posting about my latest fashion acquisition, for example.
Hmm.
So, but I guess for most people, they want to show off. They want to show off their girlfriend or their boyfriend or their husband, their holidays, whatever it is. And,
Yeah.
and those who are into that sort of thing will feel envy for not having it quite as good, or aspire to cause that sense of envy that they feel, because I think
Hmm.
a lot of people actually want. I mean, there's this expression, arm candy. A man who is wealthy would want an attractive woman on his arm to be his arm candy, because
Hmm.
he's so attractive he can't possibly be be seen with a plain woman,
Hmm.
and
And
preferably
vice versa.
two
There's, yeah.
attractive women. Hmm.
Yeah, and I would say that without going into too much, because I do a separate happiness class on how to be good at sex, but I would say don't look at porn to improve your sex life, because what you're actually doing, I would say two initial problems and probably many other problems related to it, is that first of all, you're training your mind. Your mind is plastic. It changes what it thinks is beautiful constantly. It's very easy to change that. And what you're doing, instead of training your mind to think your wife is the most beautiful, or vice versa, your husband is the most beautiful, handsome person in the world, you're training your mind to think that thing on TV is the most beautiful thing. So you're actually going to ruin your sex life by doing that. And also, porn is designed to be as extreme as possible. It can't be boring and normal. Therefore, it's going to encourage you to do stupid gymnastics, which will actually ruin your relationship, because you'll be spending more time doing the gymnastics than having intimate time with your husband or wife. So I would just say looking at porn to help your sex life, very bad idea. Any response to that?
Um, I would agree, because there's far too much of it, and people, because they watch it, have very high expectations. As you say, that they'll be trained to. I mean, they can't help but think, oh, but my husband or my wife is not, this slender, attractive, or muscled, whatever, and they will think that they're missing out. And
Yeah,
maybe they don't need all that stuff anyway. They would, probably be quite happy to, hold hands and, not, be happy with their vanilla sex, instead of being given all kinds of, crazy ideas about porn in, strange places with, weird
doing
people.
weird things. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, all sorts of strangers and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, porn is not a reality. The short versions. It's a very ugly reality when we dig deeper as well. So um, okay, so the next thing is about um, fashion. There's different kind of fashion I'll be talking about, and the next one is about masculine versus feminine um, fashion, and is it important to look masculine? So in Islam, men are forbidden from wearing silk or gold, and I suppose one part.
What's the reason for that?
And the reason for that is to be men are supposed to be as masculine as possible, and women are supposed to be as feminine as possible. So, what's special about silk? It's a very delicate material. Um,
That
so,
only women are allowed to wear.
yes, yes. And I suppose, so besides the obvious thing about making men as masculine as possible, and then we can talk about why it's necessary for men to be masculine, why it's necessary for women to be feminine. Um, there's an important question of what is objectively feminine or masculine, because you might say, in the West, you might say, oh, wearing a skirt for a man is feminine, but then you've got, you know, men wearing kilts, which I would say is actually quite masculine, because they're Highlanders and, in Scotland wearing kilts, and they're very tough people. So I wouldn't say it's feminine to wear a kilt. And you've also got people in Africa who are, men who are very masculine, who wear heart shapes all over. It's because there's just wear more colorful things. So somebody has to decide what is objectively masculine, feminine, what the line is. Um, so have you got any ideas, any thoughts about what is masculine and feminine in terms of dress and why it's important before I have like a go at explaining it in my own way?
Well, I was interested to hear you talk about men wearing kilts and sarongs and skirts, and women wearing the shalwar kameez, which is
Right.
the woman wearing trousers and never a skirt. And I don't think it's so much to do with what they wear, because there'll be sort of different signals of masculinity and femininity in the different cultures. What I think is more important is the purpose. So when you were talking about humans being masculine and feminine, it made me think of the animal kingdom, where the male is actually more magnificent, and the female is very plain, but the female is the one who makes a choice. It's like, ooh, I really fancy his tail. I think I'll mate with him because it's just like the best, the longest I've ever seen. And obviously, it's not a good idea for the male to have too big or too long a tail, because it would make him the victim of predators. But he has to have that in order to please a female, or he will die without issue. In
Hmm.
the animal kingdom, so I guess a man has to take that risk, and in order to get a fighting chance of mating with a hen, um,
Hmm.
in the animal kingdom. So fashions are um, used as, or clothes are used as indicators, and when we wear clothes, the we can make subtle adjustments to them to indicate status and availability, as you were saying, color and bright things, um, to eventually get our way, because I guess we're not going to be putting signs on ourselves saying we are single, what age we are, and what our income is, to because it's undignified.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. And that's why we have arranged marriages. to make that kind of make that clear and solve that problem. So suppose is so now we're talking about what does it mean to dress in a masculine way? I think the underlying question before that needs to be, why do we need to dress? Why does a man need to be dressing in a masculine way? What does it even mean? And one of the things that I think are apparent in Islam through telling men not to wear silk is that their job is to be rough and tough and deal with the outside world. Silk is all about being delicate and being soft, and women have that job. They can be delicate and soft. They're the heart and so they're the heart of the home, okay, and they take care of the delicate things like little children. They have to be delicate. They have to have feelings a lot stronger than men do. Otherwise, their children would be dead because kids. I think you get what I mean. Like,
Yeah. That women are empathetic, and they can sense things just by their feminine instinct. And
yes,
um, but I think in terms of what you're wearing, different cultures will find, oh, he's wearing something that looks like a skirt. That's what girls wear. Let's reject that. But I think masculinity and femininity is fundamentally about behavior and not about fashion, because fashions are different in different cultures. So I you know we shouldn't concentrate on that too much. And also, fashion is frivolous and keeps changing, and we should concentrate on more important things like genuine femininity and genuine masculinity. That
I'm
isn't
not
just.
sure if you really believe that because okay, so there was a study that said that going back to men wearing skirts, that men who wore skirts behaved in a more feminine way, which isn't surprising. Now, I might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I think it's in that study that, although I didn't look into it too deeply, I automatically assumed it was men who thought wearing a skirt was a feminine thing, and they purposely wore feminine clothes, and that affected them. And I don't think it's surprising that what you wear affects you. And the reason why I doubt you believe that fashion doesn't affect you or doesn't matter what you wear is when you see a trans person, I think you'll be the first person to be disgusted, or whatever the word is, to see a man dressing as a woman and therefore acting. That's part of the whole act. You start wearing feminine clothes and then you start acting in a feminine
Yeah,
way.
you get into the act, because there was some social experiment that I read about in a fashion magazine saying that they have this control group, and they got these control group to answer questions about science and maths, wearing their ordinary clothes, and then they made them wear lab coats and to answer technical questions, and they got it better. The same people who wore lab coats became more accurate in their answers, because they wore the correct things. So yes, I mean, we behave differently if we're in uniform or not in uniform, or in our at home wear. Our behavior is changed. But interestingly, these days, with a lot of people working from home, that 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 there'll be this sort of half and half thing. Like a woman might wear a hijab when she's talking, with FaceTime with her family, but actually she's wearing a mini skirt, in her bottom half. So
I
there's a.
mean, that's because it's not on the camera. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So.
for a husband. That's fine because it's different, isn't it?
Mm. But I
Yeah,
mean, men do that too. I mean, they wear kind of suit and tie and jacket, and then the in their boxer shorts, and in their
yeah.
bottom half. So maybe they're not quite getting into the spirit of things. But I guess if nobody notices, then it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, the top half is for the public sphere, and the bottom half is for people at home. So that's fine. It's a different thing, you know. It's Just like when you go to sleep, no, you don't. You wear your pajamas, but you don't even necessarily wear your pajamas at work. It might be, it depends on how relaxed they are, but yeah, just there is a definite difference between the private and public sphere. Part of your life. So yeah. Um, Okay, so yeah, so I would say one of the steps towards being masculine is to dress in some way masculine and be clear about what that means. So wearing relatively rough clothes, not wearing things that are deemed feminine, like gold. It could have been, what about silver? But silver wasn't the red line that God, prescribed. Um, and so it might seem arbitrary, but I think there needs to be a red line somewhere, something that God has decided objectively. And I don't think it's completely arbitrary, because gold is more shiny, silver is relatively dull. Yeah, so I wonder, I'm
And
not
more
sure.
practical, I suppose. Silver has a lot of practical uses that gold doesn't have.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. So I think one of the steps of being masculine, as I was saying, is what you wear and purposely being masculine in the way you dress. Um, okay, so what's the next thing? Men having a beard. Um, yes, and women wearing a headscarf. Actually, sorry, no, that's not the same category of things. I didn't get this, make the notes on this properly, actually, this bit. But let's just focus on men wearing a beard then. Because I was researching and I wasn't sure what the rules were for women exactly. So, anyway.
About
Uh,
wearing beards.
no, yeah, there's some weird sayings of Prophet Muhammad relating to not taking the hair off your face for women. I was like, that can't be right. So I'm researching that a bit more.
But actually, this reminds me of a friend of mine. But before he met his girlfriend, he had this really long, untidy beard, and then he met her, and he shaved it all off. I mean, it was clear why he did it. Why he was doing it, because to please a woman.
Hmm.
You're saying a man must never shave his beard off to please a woman, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. That's a really interesting point. Okay. The reason why it's really interesting is because in the West, people have lost a sense of what their roles are, and that's why their relationships don't work. So, what woman would be pleased by their man having no beard is a woman who has a confused idea of what masculine means. Maybe they're a lot of modern that maybe they don't even think a man should be masculine, which is an increasingly common problem. So that's why I wouldn't limit the fashion, all fashion, to what your wife or husband thinks at the time, because it could be that their ideas are a load of rubbish, which is very common. Do you know what I mean? Their idea could be that their husband should be feminine. Rubbish idea. Your relationship's not going to work. That kind of thing. So, what do you think about that?
Um, well, I think basically for any partnership, a partnership that works is when one person can't do the other thing that the other person can, and that kind of partnership is more likely to work. Because if both can do the same things, then they'll probably think, oh, I don't need you then, do I? I don't need to put up with your rubbish. But it's like, well, only I can, look after the children. Only you can bring home the bacon, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then it's more likely to last.
Yes. So you need a reason for wanting each other. But not only that, I think a woman who is biologically a certain way, gentle, weaker, but more attuned to the needs of children who can't express themselves. Sometimes I think women are sort of illogical, but I think sometimes you've got to be sort of illogical and more emotional to deal with a child who does not negotiate, let's say. You can't be logical with a 1-year-old or a 6-month-year-old. You have to be completely empathetic. Um, it's
Or
so
understand its emotions,
yeah.
because women are emotional creatures, and so are children, and that's why they understand each other better.
Right, yeah. So a
Mhm.
woman trying to be a man would defeat the purpose of a woman being a woman. Like you just ruin everything that's good about a woman. And a woman trying to be a man will,
Would
stretch.
alienate men, and,
Well,
and,
it
and
would
then not be
ruin
seen as
her.
an attractive partner.
Yes, that's a really good one as well. Like there's a great comedy sketch that's where it's not a very long one, but it goes something like this: the reason why I love women is because they're not men. Do you know what I mean? That's as
Mm.
long as it gets, but it's kind of the point, right? um so yeah, I was saying like a woman trying to be a man, I don't know. It's like a fish. I don't know what the comparison be, but you're just ruining. It's like my microphone trying to be a camera or something. It's just not going to work very well on the
My camera
surface of.
is a microphone too, though.
Oh
I've
yeah,
got
they're
it
not
two in one.
really. They're very close to each other. That's all it is. It's not
Yeah,
really.
the one thing. But
Yeah.
yes, I
It
understand.
wouldn't work. It works badly, and it harms men when they're trying to be women. And but people don't understand that, and the reason why they don't understand this, I would say, very obvious thing, is because coming back to this idea that they've been obsessed with the idea of freedom to do anything they want, and because of that, because they're so obsessed with it, they've lost all sense of reality. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, but you must be free. You must be allowed to do anything you want, and then they lose track of like reality. Oh,
Yes, yes. This includes the claim that um, gender is a social construct. But if you leave children alone, apparently infant boys and infant girls behave in a quite different way, in the kind of toys that they like. But I suppose a lot of people think, well, why can't I play with dolls if I want to? Why can't I play with, trains if I want to, even if I'm a girl? And I think eventually all these thoughts lead to ideas of um, sexual liberation. It's like, well, it's my body. I'll do whatever I like. If it's my mind, I'll think of myself as a man, even though I'm a woman, or vice versa. And I suppose ultimately this way madness lies, because if most of the men in your society are not doing what they're supposed to be doing as men, then they won't be able to perform their role, which is to defend territory, defend principles, defend all these things that are
or
important.
make the world as it exists. They make the houses, they make the bridges, they
Mm.
make technology, even the software, they think in systems. So people are, first of all, they're free to do anything they want, and they're free to destroy their lives. And these videos are saying, hang on a minute, I rather you don't destroy your life, and through your choice of be your belief that you should be free to do anything you want. But nobody really believes that. Nobody really just does anything that they want. They don't just turn up to work and say, I'm free to do anything they want. That's just a lie. They're lying to themselves. But what was I getting at? So yeah, you don't want to be free to do anything you want. You're always looking for guidance and a direction in your life. And there's the, and the other thing I was going to say is, like, you can easily disprove that gender is just a social construct. There's so much evidence, being provided by science. Like, for example, the what's it called, the baby brain. When mothers first have their first child, their brain restructures to be able to take care of that child. Same thing with sort of like with men, or alternatively for men, they always think of systems and they like technology more than women do. This is just like, no, this, through unbiased psychological studies. So they're good at being industrious, therefore good at making the outside world, where the women take care of the, or better, are better suited or naturally suited to taking care of the inside world, inside the home. So it's easy to prove that there are natural roles, or what's the better word? It's best biologically best suited roles. Just like, if you got a cat to try to be anything but a cat, it would be rubbish at that, but it would be really good at being a cat. So we just we somehow think we're beyond our biology, and that our biology somehow makes no difference. And that's a really dumb idea. And the reason why we accept this really dumb idea is because we just want to be free to do anything we want. And then and you're free to do that if you want, and destroy your own life. But that's it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, the sort of gender roles leading sometimes to gender segregation is necessary for the self-esteem of that particular group. So women feel special and think, oh, men can't do this thing that only we can do, and men also feel special, thinking women can't just do the things that only we can do, and that's important for the self-esteem of the different sexes, in my view.
I think that's great. I think I was saying something like that in the beginning, which the sense of identity, like, what do you stand for? What do you do that's special? What are you so great? What is your role that needs to be fulfilled? So men need to be men to make the world a better place. Women need to be women. It's an incredibly important role to take care of make sure the next generation survives and grows up healthy. Like I don't know if it's a normal thing, but my wife's the one who's always like, you must eat this healthy food. And every time I take my kids out, I do the naughty stuff, and I give them fizzy drinks because I'm less aware of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, women are just better at taking care of the little ones and the little details, and managing the house, and managing property and things like that. And men are just good at what they've always been doing, which is going outside the house and making money and providing a service to the world by making money. Like, you don't just make money, you make the world a better place by creating a bridge or really good software or something like that. So that playing your role gives you a sense of identity and self-worth. Is, I think you were saying that as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people feel so lost without that. And I would say this is a very big reason why people are trying to change sex and things like that, because they're not comfortable. They haven't understood their role, therefore they're not comfortable with who they are, because they're trying to be a bit of everything. If they're a man, they're trying to be a woman somehow, and they feel lost, and therefore they do anything to not feel lost. And one of those things is, having operations and trying to, change your body parts. You will
And
feel like a
thinking that
woman.
would make it, because they sort of think, if I do this extreme thing, it's bound to make me feel happier,
Mm,
because I've shown how much I want it by taking this extreme step.
yeah.
And then it makes them hard to challenge, because then you'd be challenging the wisdom of their decision. Maybe you are saying that they're mentally ill or very stupid to do
Yeah.
those things to themselves, and I'd expect happiness at the end of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, and I also, yeah, I would agree there's a mental illness, but it's not the first thing I would say. I think a lot of mental illnesses exist of different forms because we live such an unnatural lifestyle, because we're doing all these blind experiments about how we should live our lives without really thinking about it, because our experiments are based on freedom rather than responsibility or providing any function. And also, men feel great being men when they're amongst men, other men. Like, we're going to do this together. We're going to build this bridge. We're going to make this house. We're going to make this thing, the world, a bit better, And women feel the same. They get together and they have these little parties. I was in the McDonald's the other day and I saw all the ladies get together and they had all their kids together and they get together and function in a completely different way that men I don't think really understand. So there's a lot of value about men being men and women being women that has been lost. Yeah.
Yes, and I think the idea that God created us as male or female, and we have to accept it because we wouldn't dream of questioning the, hypothetical supreme authority, kind of makes us accept the situation, in the same way that, we wish we were richer, taller, smarter, slimmer, whatever, but we're not. And we just have to accept it. I mean, we might have an eye missing or a leg missing or, some important thing that we don't want to be missing, but we have to somehow accept that that was meant to be, and we have to get on with our lives and live as best as we can. And I think if we accept it with resignation, we would not be quite so unhappy than if we, try to change things. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think was it me and you who discussed about Muslims stupid or geniuses? And it was based on basically this idea that Muslims have accepted that these are the roles. So instead of trying to figure it out and experiment with it and getting everything wrong, Muslims have accepted men are supposed to be men, they're supposed to be masculine, these are the jobs, and then it works really well. And they really, not even with resignation do they choose to. I would hate to be a woman. Like why would I? I mean, being a man, I would just be rubbish at being a woman. I'd have no feeling or intention of being a woman. And also, I think it's worth saying, and it's sort of important, that the idea of being a man in Islam also involves showing love and attention, but a different way. Like we hug each other all the time, we shake hands. Prophet Muhammad cried a lot, when he was crying for other people's problem. So we're not limited showing, men are not limited in Islam to not, we're able to show all the emotions we need to as men. So we're not constrained or limited or missing out on anything. So so I do agree that when you got God telling you got to be a man and this is what you got to do, it's not a problem. It's not a problem because you really enjoy being a man, because you're really using your faculties as best as they possibly can be used. Do you know what I mean? Rather than pushing yourself to be something you're not and then really ruining your life.
There may be, some women or men who think, men would think, it's a woman who gets a cushy life. She can be a housewife. Why can't I be a house husband? Or there might be a woman who think, I'm smart enough to be a scientist. Why can't I be a scientist and an astronaut?
So I had a recent experience when my wife was really ill in hospital and I had to take care of the kids, and I found out how incredibly hard it was, because I'll be trying to solve a problem. Like my daughter be going completely mental in the middle of the street. Like, I really had a bad time. Literally, she'd be on the floor, and then some lady would come up and give me a tissue to wipe her nose because she would be ready. Like, women are completely different. They're prepared completely differently. And then I'd phone up my wife, just put YouTube in front of her, blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff, and problem be solved. So. Women are just really good at what they do. It's not a cushy lifestyle. It's a horrible lifestyle for a man to be at home. I don't think men feel complete, or they don't feel fulfilled, because men need to do different things. They're excited by different things. They're excited according to psychologists, by systems. So they have different needs. And women, according to psychologists, are more interested in people. So they like emotions and things like that, and they're really good at it. And the world would be a terrible place without women, and the world would be a terrible place without men. Just like uh, there was an experiment that's talked about where a bunch of women were put on an island and a bunch of men were put on an island, and because men like systems and they put themselves in a hierarchy and say, this is your job, I'm in charge, and they understand somebody needs to be in charge, and things go brilliantly. Obviously, it'd be terrible to have that situation forever because they'll get bored without women. But then on the other island where there's women, within 2 days, everything, collapsing. They're all fighting each other, all squabbling. They don't understand. That's just all that happens. Yeah, they don't understand systems.
Yes, or hierarchy.
Hierarchy, exactly, because they're too friendly. They hate telling other people what they should do or seemingly being impolite. Men was like, this is what's got to happen. You go and freaking get the fish right now, and don't be sloppy. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be. It's like an army. You've got to do these things and don't say sorry for it and don't apologize. You've got to just get the job done. Otherwise, we're dead. That's all it is. And we don't feel bad about it, just because we're made differently. We just feel differently.
Yes, and I suppose women don't really get taught leadership skills. So and possibly men don't want to encourage women to be taught leadership skills, so they can't. Um, um,
I
no,
think it's just a natural disposition, really. Um, People like women take things too personally as well. So part of leadership is not taking things personally. Do you know what I mean? It's like this is just the job that's got to be done. It's not.
yes, and being seen to have principles, so people kind of know to predict your behaviour. But if you don't have any principles that you stick to, then you might be given a different situation. Sorry, you might be given the same um, scenario at different times, but and you will you know make a different decision. So
You mean like women don't stick to principles as much? You mean? Because I think
yeah.
that's true. Because this is what happens when you don't have a father at home. Women are pushovers, and they feel bad about enforcing rules, but men just do that automatically. They're like the natural policeman in the family. So if you have that at a societal level, you just have chaos. People saying, "Oh, I know I said that, but I changed my mind because we're friends." No, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? I'm saying if a woman would say that, we say, we're friends. I'm sorry about that. I don't want to push you into do something you don't want. But a man
Mhm.
would say, you've got to do this, otherwise we're dead. This is how it works. You know.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
Mhm.
So what was the next point I was thinking of? So men and women wear loose outer clothing. Is modesty good for your mental health? Okay. So in Islam, we're encouraged to have loose outer clothing because, firstly, if you wear skin tight clothes, you might as well have no clothes on. I remember feeling that after my first day in Jordan. I came back to England after a couple of years. I didn't go back every year to England. And I felt like I was so shocked how animalistic everybody looked like. When they go for a jog and everything's skin tight and their butt crack is showing and all their bits are showing, and as if that's normal. Like they literally everybody looked like animals, and I just got used to it again. Um, you know, it was really weird. So first of all, that's the reason you need loose outer clothing, but also um, it's good for mental health. Why? So there's the studies, of course, there's lots of studies that show that women who choose out, so they're not forced, I think that's a very important thing, they're not forced to wear modest clothing, have better body image, or less, no, that have less body image issues. So body image issues refers to things like, oh, I'm in the wrong body, I need to have a sex change, oh, I've got, I'm fat, when you're actually really skinny and anorexic. So these are body image issues. Men protect themselves from these body image issues by wearing loose outer clothing. And some people might go, how on earth does that work? How do they protect themselves? Because what they do is they've stepped out of the, I don't know how to describe it, but there's a sense of like competition between women in public or something. Like, I'm wearing this, do you accept that? Like, why do women have to buy a whole new dress? My wife doesn't do that, but I hear about it all the
Yeah,
time.
there's
Oh,
a wedding. Oh, buy another outfit.
yeah,
Another
and why do they
party.
have 40 shoes? There's something wrong going on there, right? Okay, it doesn't make sense. My wife doesn't do that. And that's because Muslims have stepped out of this, Muslim women have stepped out of this race of competing with everybody in public or something. I don't know what it is. I don't really know how to describe it. Um, so when you, and I see this, like, again, this, I see one of the reasons why I make all the videos that I do, I'm trying to get across the relative peace of mind people have here, because of their fashion, and that's how powerful it is. So I went to a little shop and actually recorded it yesterday, and I was saying, and I didn't know how to say, because when you go into a shop when you're recording and nobody knows what you're talking about, it feels a bit weird. So I didn't do the commentary there, but I put in the title. I said, spot why people have less social anxiety. And it was because even the little girls who are just growing up and almost becoming women or something like that, they were walking around with this loose kind of almost generic scarf thing on. They pop it over when they go out, right? And what that does is that there's no over self-obsessing about your appearance. You could have terrible hair. You could just be wearing your pajamas. They often are just wearing their pajamas underneath, right? They put it on, go and grab whatever they want from the little shop, and then come back. And they're just not competing with each other. But if that little piece of loose clothing that was, I'm talking about women at the moment, was not there, they'll be constantly self-aware, and they'll be constantly spending ages on their hairstyle and making sure they were wearing clothes acceptable. Do you know what I mean? Like, they didn't want to
Mhm.
look, they go, oh, those clothes are not, I don't know what, the high enough standard to be accepted in the shop for 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? There's none of that, and they're just more relaxed and happy and less focused on their clothes, and that's a
Mhm.
great kind of fact. I love that piece.
Yes, yes. Did you, when you were working, have to go through this dress down Friday thing?
Um, I've never had a job where they've had that, because I've never in.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I'm
So
always
I was
very
thinking of
casual.
this chap who hated it. So he had this job, and there was something called Dress Down Friday, and and every Friday he'd put something on, and then he'd take it off and put another a thing on, because it didn't quite match the sort of casual smart standards that he was expected to fulfill when he went to work. And then he realized what he was doing. He was behaving like a woman, and he just put his uniform back on, and never kowtowed to the Dress Down Friday ever again, because he saw that
Interesting.
it was making him behave like a woman.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Women's smart clothes are very complicated, aren't they? Yeah, because men just wear a suit, and women come up
Yeah,
with
they
all
just have to be
sorts of.
well groomed, right? You know,
Yeah.
there's not much you can go wrong, but women, you make some little mistake, and your friends or your associates will be criticizing you for getting it wrong and not being aware.
Women are very tough on women, aren't they? Because men don't really care what they wear, really.
Yes,
What
I mean,
women wear.
I spoke to this young lady who was going out on a date, and I said, "Look, he'll be happy to see you, you know, uh, at this party." And this, "Oh, no, no, I'm dressing for the girls, because
Hmm.
it'll be the other women who will be most scrutinizing her."
Hmm. And that's that competition thing that I'm talking about. So when these women go to the shop, they're not concerned what the men will think so much. Maybe they do, to maybe their face or something. But there is a lot of scrutiny between the women, and so they have to dress up. If they didn't have this thing, they could just throw over themselves and feel very relaxed. So that's the value of loose outer clothing. I should talk about men as well. Yeah, so even men, they can. I've seen men, even close relatives, the ones who wear tight tops to show their muscles. Um, I tend to find all those people who concentrate on their appearance in the long term, men I should say, tend to have like depression and not happy with themselves because that's a very self limited way of valuing yourself. I think the infinite way of just valuing yourself is through morality, and sort of a better way or almost infinite way. I don't know how to describe it. Like I'd say the least valuable thing you can say about yourself is your physical body. Like there's not so much, I don't know, much good you can do through it. I know, but then there's your intelligence, which has a lot more scope and a lot more good you can do to the world. And then there's your morality, which is even beyond that, like your kindness and things like that. Those are the things that really give you self-worth. And when you wear skin tight clothes as a man, I really feel sorry for those kind of people. I really do. Like it's like when I see those people, including relatives of my own, and I've seen their mental health deteriorate. Um, what do you think about men wearing skin tight clothes and grown men like 30, 40 years old still needing to show off their muscles? I don't know. Maybe you've got a different opinion to mine. What do you think?
Well, if they do, it's because they're single. So I guess, if you're in your 40s, it's like, well, you should have settled down by now. So why are you, going around, trying to attract women at your age? You should have done it by now. Maybe that's a kind of shame to for
Yeah, like
that sort of thing.
you look like a loser. Yeah, and I would, yeah, and I think you have. I think what people mistake is they don't. Or the mistake people make is they don't realize you're a different person when you're a teenager than when you're at 30 or when you're at 40. When you're a teenager, you really don't have much to offer other than your muscles. That's why it's okay for a teenager to show off their muscles and you don't look as stupid. But if that's kind of that's all you've got to offer when you're 30 years old or 40 years old, um, then I think you begin to look stupid. I think just like, you know, a child, a baby wearing a nappy looks cute, but a teenager wearing a nappy looks disgusting. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
look there are different demands for different ages. So
Yes.
yeah. Okay,
Yes,
so that's
and the whole
go on.
idea of being extra fashion conscious is to attract a member of the opposite sex. And I suppose if you're still trying, after you're 40, it means you somehow missed a boat or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just looking at this note. Stops women competing in constant something like shopaholics. Um, So yeah, women. So we were talking about this weird competition or expectations or between women, um, and I was trying to explain why it is that I think. Oh, so I missed a saying a problem. I mean, so the most modest of women are those who are least demanding in terms of clothing and food, and the most pious of women are those who are most content with what they have. Yeah, this kind of controlling your wardrobe leads to better mental health. Like if you know you really like God wants you to have less things, I think that helps or pauses people from going down the slippery slope of certain addictions like being a shopaholic by buying lots of clothes that you don't need, because when you don't think that it's wrong to have lots of clothes, then when you go to a shop, you say, "Oh, I just have another look at more clothes and more clothes," and then you end up buying that rubbish that you don't need. But when you have many steps before that, and I'm not even going to go to a shop because that was a huge waste of my time because I've already got enough clothes and I should be pleased with that. And you know what I mean? There's kind of like a completely different mindset. There's a slippery slope mindset of people who don't have a religion and who don't have red lines, and they say maybe just going to a shop is okay. And then there's the people on the other side who are completely protected from that because they have clear red lines. They say I only need 5 pieces of clothing, and they're also protected in so many other ways, like the loose outer clothing, like I discussed before. So they're not in constant competition with all the other ladies in society. So I think it just protects your mental health in so many ways. Um, this loose outer clothing.
And your
Uh,
pocket.
yes, that's right. And of course, your pocket affects your mental health as well. If you're spending all the money and going into debt that you don't, buying clothes on credit card, that's also going to be bad for your mental health. So it's all a cyclical effect, I suppose. Okay, gone. You're going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say about female fashions and obviously the difference between Muslim fashions, which are supposed to be modest and elegant, and the non-Muslim fashions, which is supposed to be revealing and or distractingly revealing. So maybe even when you are looking, when you are single and looking, you shouldn't be showing all your wares, so to speak. You should be holding something of it back, because it is probably a sign. Well, it is interpreted as a sign of desperation if you show too much
Yeah.
as a
So
woman.
there's a lot of keywords that I like that you said. So one was something about women, Muslim clothing. I can't remember the word he used, but
Elegant and
elegant,
modest.
elegant. Yes,
Mhm.
elegant. And a lot of people say that Muslim women can look really beautiful because it leaves, what's the phrase? Leaves room
Something
for
to
the
the
imagination.
imagination. Yes.
Yes, right. Um, and if you go to the at the other end of the scale, like to prostitute levels, where they leave nothing, I don't think they have that in England. Prostitutes walking the streets, but like in all the American movies where they have, they're wearing pants.
Streetwalkers. Hmm.
Exactly right. They leave nothing to the imagination, and they look really quite disgusting. Maybe the movies are trying to make them look disgusting. I don't know how it works. Um, just like animals of no worth. So I suppose that's what Islam is there to bring human beings above the level of animals and raise their status. Do you know what I mean? And so there's that element of being elegant rather than brash, I suppose is the word.
Yes, and I think in terms of attracting mates, I suppose the woman shouldn't allow her beauty to overwhelm the man so that he doesn't even think of anything else. Maybe he should think a bit about her character, her personality, and her other skills outside the bedroom.
Yes, thank you for making me think of those. Like you were saying lots of good things, and then I forgot about them. So, one is that I can understand women wearing in the West not wearing many clothes because they don't have a way to communicate that they are single and they need to get married. So they've got to do the most obvious way, which is wear lots of revealing clothes and make it completely obvious that they're desperately looking for somebody to marry or have a relationship with. And that's because they don't have a community-based marriage system or arranged marriage system. So I can appreciate that problem, and that problem also needs to be solved to solve this problem of wearing immodest clothing. You've got to solve the root of the problem. And the other thing I like that you said or hinted at is about confusing people, like over sexualizing society. So there's a great description that one of my spiritual leaders or the Khalifas described a situation. So like electricity. So electricity is great. It's got lots of great uses. Okay, but it needs to be insulated. And if it's not insulated, it goes everywhere and it's destructive. It's the same with sexual energy. It's very powerful, it's very important. It continues the species. It creates this kind of intimacy between husband and wife. But
It
when
has to
it's
be
not
regulated.
insulated, if it's not regulated or insulated through clothes or behavior and rules about who has sex with who and who shows their body to who and all that kind of stuff, it just becomes destructive, which we can see has become destructive in so many ways, not just through sexually transmitted diseases, but the breakdown of all relationships to the extent that men no longer want to have a relationship with Western women. 50% of young men under 30 who are supposed to be their prime age when they're desperate to have sex and desperate to have a relationship are not in any relationship. That's how bad it's got. That's how destructive it's got. All this blind freedom has just ruined all of the relationships. So we need to come back to our senses. We need to calm down, and we need to really let go of us, as I said, I think this biggest of our problems, which is um, obsession on freedom. Like Viktor Frankl said that he wishes not only was there, you'll probably get bored of my uh, hearing this from me because you've probably heard this lots of times, but he said he wishes there was not only is a statue of liberty, but a statue of responsibility, because there's really nothing in life. There's no. You really think you're. This is one of the reasons why people are so suicidal. They have no purpose in their life, no responsibility. Responsibility sounds boring at first, but it's the thing that makes life worthwhile for a human being. People don't understand how the human robot works. It's got certain buttons, and one of the most important buttons is the responsibility button. If that's not being pressed all the time, you just get depressed, and people really don't realize that. Um, yeah. Okay. So, what was I going to say? Clothes generally have an effect on society. So, I think you talked about how um, if you're wearing a lab coat or something, it affects your mindset and you work better as an individual. But the lab coat effect works on society around you. You might have heard of the Milgram experiment, where somebody wears a lab coat and he tells somebody to electrocute another stranger, increasingly higher voltages until he killed them. You've heard of that one, the Milgram
Yes, yes, I,
experiment?
I think that I think they hired an actor and they scream in agony, well, but pretend, but and some people say, well, are you sure we should be doing it? And the person in the lab could say, yes, yes, it's fine, don't worry, and they would do it. Yeah.
Right. So we don't realize, if you don't study psychology, how easily controlled we are by our environment, including other people's fashion. So our own clothes, um, and also other people's clothes. Um, and so in a more and that's the whole point of that Milgram experiment was try to understand why the Holocaust happened. How could people kill other people, on other people's behest, other people's instructions. Um, so that explains how easily we're controlled. And a lot of people don't realize how easily we're controlled. And then on maybe a more subtle level, or more relevant to this particular discussion about sexualization of society, those who wear more revealing clothes. So I just there was a study that says those who wear more revealing clothes are more likely to be harassed, objectified, and treated with aggression. And then you think to yourself, do they really need to do a study for that? I mean, what do you think? Is that obvious? Like, if you wear more revealing clothes, you're going to be more harassed
Hmm. But
and yeah.
that is the sort of scattergun approach to mating, isn't it?
Mm.
You show all the men who can see you that you're up for it, and then of course they would you know be attracted or make a move. Well, if you were more discreet, then you will be you would have fewer people who are interested, but maybe they would be higher quality people who are taking an
Mm.
interest.
I think one of the reasons why. people use a scattergun approach is because of it's just part of the whole set of short-term thinking, because they don't necessarily want a relationship, they just want to be looked at and, you know, people to be excited about them. And then they've just like in social media, people get excited about making stupid videos that get lots of likes. They don't care about what they're doing and their long-term happiness. They're interested in their short-term happiness. So they're like, a woman, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of this, a lot of women just want attention just to feel a bit happier in the moment right now, so they're quite happy to be objectified. But the point I'm making here really is that I'm trying to do things at different levels. There's the individual level, I've talked about people's mental health, but now I'm trying to talk about the effect we have on society, how we sexualize society, how we make other people more aggressive towards you, and so we're being more aggressive towards each other. We're having a negative effect on people by dressing in a more sexual way. What do you think?
Well, yes, I think that there are some women who do like the idea of men fighting over them. You know,
Hmm.
they think it's a sign of power that they got men to fight over them.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. And of course, going back to the individual, people, this I think there's a big lie that's being told, which is to women, and that is if you are wearing really revealing clothes, that means you're really confident. You're really confident to be able to wear, nothing out in public. And I think what they haven't realized, there's a natural urge, self-control system is like, don't wear nothing out in the public. That's a bad idea. It's not being brave or confident. It's just ignoring your natural impulses to protect yourself from strangers. And so in the long term, people who wear revealing clothes do have more body image issues. They are less confident. And it's just the same reason why a man who just wears revealing clothes and obsesses about their appearance rather than their personality, they end up not having much to offer the world. And you will feel that inside, and you will feel less confident for a good reason, because you have less value than you should. You should be developing yourself as a person rather than just your appearances. Does that make any sense? I mean, have you heard people say that somebody is really confident for not wearing clothes, much, or wearing scant, yeah, not
Well,
wearing
I
much?
suppose, in a way, if you're wearing revealing clothes and you're confident, it's supposed to mean that you're happy with you know your arms and your legs, and they're not fat and not too skinny, and that's why you're confident wearing so few clothes. But then you can but if this is extended to people who don't have perfect bodies, being confident and showing so much, and we often see now that really quite obese people are showing too much flesh, and you create well an unsightly sight. I guess I would say,
Hmm.
and it doesn't give a good impression of you or your society if people who don't have great bodies are so lacking in self-awareness that they become fashion victims. They wear
Yeah.
things that are not suitable for them.
And just to make this argument more realistic, very few people can maintain. Like, I would look terrible if I had all my parts showing. Like, I've got a bit of a belly and all this kind of stuff and whatever, right? It would definitely make you lose your confidence if you felt you had to wear all sorts of revealing clothes, which means you have to have a perfect body all the time. That's like a lot of hard work for something really shallow. And I think just thinking about it logically for a little bit of time, you realize that's not going to make you confident or happy in yourself. I mean, don't isn't I mean, what do you think? Like, isn't it hard to maintain a perfect body? What do you
Yes,
think?
yes, and I suppose the whole idea of getting married is like, you worked on your body, you managed to attract somebody, and you got they've married you, and you don't have to try so hard anymore, and that
Yes.
is part of the comfort of being married. That hopefully you have a married spouse saying, I'm off, you're too fat for me now, or whatever.
And I suppose you make a really, there's an important point in there, which is there's a lot of, do you know, I probably mentioned just pearly things or pearl.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these people who are not married give a lot of bad advice. And one of their bad advices, and it sounds good at first, is that women, when they get married, and they're skinny and fit when they get married, they just let go and they gain a lot of weight. Um, and Pearl says, you're terrible for that. And I don't think it's so terrible. Um, Although you shouldn't become totally fat, but I think if you become totally fat, I think there's another psychological issue, some other issues there anyway to deal with. My point is that the reason why it's not terrible, and the reason why Pearl, who's still single and telling everybody that they should be married and doing everything that she's not doing, and even though she's a really famous podcaster, is that she doesn't understand. And you can tell me if you agree with this. Is that there's something called husband goggles or something like that. I can't remember what it's called,
Hmm.
but basically, what happens is if you're, let's say, regularly seeing your husband or wife naked, you don't see the subtle changes over time. So you get, making as long as you're not looking at porn and all these other things, only really focusing on your husband or wife, you will start in, you will, I'll put it this way. I like my wife's body now better than when I first met her.
Hmm.
Even though her body was not, affected by having loads of kids and all C sections and all the other things that go on, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's because, yeah, it's firstly because we don't see all the change. You as a husband, you don't see all the, you don't realize all the changes because they happen slowly over time. But also you develop a relationship with the other person, your husband or wife, mentally. And so when you first see the perfect body of your husband or wife, um, you don't really appreciate it as much because you haven't, what's the word, you haven't, your plastic mind hasn't fully adapted to say this is the most amazing thing there is. And it takes some training because the training is not to look at everybody else as well at the same time.
Hmm.
So over the years you realize that's the most amazing person there is in the world, and you can train your mind that way. And so in short, what I'm trying to say is that you can let go to some extent. I've let go. And you actually, it's not just about letting go. This is another biological thing. When you're not married, you have higher testosterone or estrogen, whatever levels, and all this kind of stuff, which naturally keeps you more skinny because you're more intent. You know what I mean?
Horny and hungry
Yeah,
because
you're
you're
more
still
hungry. You've got,
seeking.
yeah, exactly. You're more seeking, and I think you've got, what's, there's another term about your body uses up the energy more and stuff like that. So basically, it's quite natural to be more skinny and things like that when you're not married, and when you're getting enough sex and all the other stuff, and you relax a little bit, you will put on a bit of weight and stuff like that. So that's natural. It's
Yes,
fine. Yeah,
yes,
I think it's very just makes sense. Okay, so that's that. Number 6. I'm, as usual, we've taken way over the. We didn't even say that we're going to be 1 hour, but are you all right with time?
yes, yes.
Yeah,
I'd love to finish all the
good.
topics that you've listed.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm on 6. There's 7 and 8. 8 is Claire. Why don't you wear a headscarf? Just so you know what's coming down the road. It's an interesting one. So number 6, women cover their hair and breasts. So going back to the verse of the Quran, it says like women have to cover their hair and breasts. Why do they have to cover their hair and breasts? Nowadays. I mean, I remember um, when I worked again. A couple of years ago, in Jordan when I used to go to. I used basically worked alongside British people, and there'll be women that said, "Oh my gosh, why do I have to cover my knees? Why are people obsessed? Why are people obsessed in Jordan about my knees? Like, because over here nobody wears miniskirt. You know what I mean? No,
Hmm.
everybody, is dressed all the way to their ankles, and they were like, "Oh, what's the why are people obsessed about this?" And so the people might think, "Why are people obsessed about my hair? Why do I have to cover my hair?" So, of course, they had to do a study to prove the obvious. And yes, across cultures, hair and breasts are considered a sign of beauty. What a surprise.
Hmm.
So that's why women have to cover up other stuff, because across cultures, biologically, however you want to describe it, women have more beautiful parts. As you said, in some other species, the male part of the species have beautiful parts. Is it the male peacock that's the good looking one?
Hmm.
Do you know how it works? Yeah. So just because the other species and other species of cats and dogs are different doesn't mean we have to be like cats and dogs or whatever. That doesn't make any sense. There's loads of things that animals do that we don't do. Like we don't eat our children, which is what lions do, and stuff, weird stuff like that. So the point I'm making is that this is how human beings are. We have certain we cross culture see certain things as you know essentially beautiful, sexual, whatever it is, and therefore it makes natural sense to respect that and cover that up. And I think it's not just imposing their will on women, as a lot of Westerners love to say. It protects women, like we've already said, from body image issues. Any thoughts about that?
Yes, because I think if women want to think of it that way, it could be that being required to cover themselves up is a sign of men respecting the power of women. It's like your hair, it's so beautiful, you have to not show it or we'll go crazy. And your bosom, well, we can't see any of that or we really will go crazy, etc. So in a way, when men are saying, please cover up, they are respecting the power of women and asking them to, put it away and not be so distracting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot of women have lost their value because they say it means nothing to show their hair or show their bottom and all this kind of stuff. So I like that point. Um, when I was studying this or doing the research for, is hair really sexual or not? Um, there was lots of interesting kind of related facts, like the average hair length has slowly been decreasing as women have slowly gone more to work, and it seemed to correlate with things like, do you remember the 1980s when women used to wear shoulder pads?
Hmm.
Yeah, and that
Yes.
was kind of like a point in time when all the women were being pushed into work and trying to make it to the top of the ladder and become
Hmm.
CEOs, and it was a big thing. And I think that's dying off. Like people are seeing um, working is not so amazing. It's pretty horrible thing. A lot of women are realizing that, and I think that's been correlating with what I've been researched, which is since the last few years, women's hair length have been increasing, which kind of shows a drive back to some level of femininity. I don't know. What do you think about that? It's a bit of a side issue, but
Well, I think when women become feminine, then men will become masculine. Or when men become really masculine, then women will just instinctively become feminine again. And so really, for things to work, just one sex has to do the right thing, and the others,
mm,
the other sex will just fall in line. So we just have to define what we mean about masculinity and femininity, apart from, all the body parts and whatever. And I think really it's the ability to, it's like men, they can't just be this shrinking violet waiting for things to happen and come their way. And women must even though they want to say and do a lot of things, they must exercise feminine restraint and not be, shouting, at men, barking out orders, because that is not the way to get them to do things for you. And men can't, just, passively wait for women to, find them attractive and ask them out. So,
Mm,
so I think, men just have to show initiative and leadership, and women have to show modesty and restraint.
yeah.
And that would be the combination that will make society work again.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Like when you don't have, like when you go, if men became masculine, then it would create a vacuum, the lack of femininity, and that needs to be filled, and women would fulfill that really well. And on top of that, I think, not I think, from studies about sexual attraction, opposites attract. And it's really obvious, isn't it? Like men like women because women are so different to men and vice versa.
Yes, yes, and,
Yeah.
and, and they really resent, women behaving like men, trying to act like men. It's like, well, I mean, if I want to be with a man, I'll be with my mates, you know,
Hmm.
and 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 the but I mean, of course, there will always be exceptions. I know, women sometimes like talking to, gay men or slightly effeminate, male fashion designers and
Oh,
that
have you
kind of
heard of this term, sneaky fuckers? I shouldn't swear. This is an actual psychological term. So there's all these people like, oh, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, I'm this. This is just another. This is like what was
change my
common.
mind.
Yeah, yeah, I
Is that the
changed my
whole idea?
mind. It's like
Yes.
basically people who aren't masculine enough to get sex the proper way, they pretend to be a lot of some other thing, something else. This is what a common trait of people on the left who are, standing up for transsexual rights, men who are standing up for transsexual rights, even though they don't really care about it, because by being agreeable to all these women, um, they eventually get into their pants, basically, sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't believe in this whole gay thing and friends with gay men and stuff like that. It's just another way of getting into people's pants. But anyway, yeah.
Yes, yes. I think that featured in an episode of Friends.
I really okay.
Yes, yes. I
I
think it was
know all the features. Go on, tell me about this.
I
I
think it
know
was Joey
Friends inside
pretending
out.
to be gay, or I don't know. No, he said it was his trick. He was just pretending he wasn't interested in women, and he would go and confess to all these new dates he's not interested in women, and they all jumped
Oh,
on him, and that was how he got his. Yes.
oh, okay. I missed that one somehow.
Uh,
Okay. I'm just going to quickly look through some of the comments really quickly. So your solution, I'll click on it and read it. So your solution is for every woman to hide behind a rug. Not as quite a rug, but yes. And it works, which is loose outer clothing. And it's quite fashionable. You should watch if you're Star Wars fans. You see most most apparel is designed after Islamic garments, including the Jedi. Um, I think someone like Claire should stay at home and just focus on making lunch and dinner. That would that problem is solved, and she wouldn't need to bother having a guardian with her. I think like she's missing. This is a Christian who really hates Muslims, by the way, just so you get where
yes,
she's
yes.
coming from.
I'm familiar with Annika, who
Yeah.
likes to troll you.
Troll me, yes. Okay, yes, you noticed her. So I mean, I think it's actually very important to make lunch and dinner. Incredibly important. I do a whole talk about how women not cooking at home have caused much of the environmental disasters, a massive knock-on effect. The the development of frozen food became a thing when women started going to work. So we shouldn't underestimate the importance of making lunch and dinner. It's a lot more healthy as well.
And men
That
love something being cooked for them and served to them. It's the whole package, and
yes,
yeah. So
Yeah,
a cup of tea becomes just so much more valuable if it's handed to them by, their wife, rather than, okay, yeah, they could easily make it themselves, but it's not the same.
yeah, because that's kind of home is where where paradise is made. It's like you could be in a home by yourself and no connection, or you could be served by a loving wife. That's a completely different thing. There's no price to be put on that. So yeah, and also there's
Yeah, I
a
remember my
sense.
father going
Yeah.
on about it,
Oh
saying my
really?
mother didn't do it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, and I'm sure that becomes some, beyond a joke, becomes eventually becomes more and more important and more frustration over time. Because when you're giving the tea, you're not just giving tea. You're like saying, "How you doing? How's your day?" or something like that, or like, there's something else going on besides, "Oh, here's a tea in your face" or something. It's a different thing, you know. Um, what's this? So this is increasingly a good friend of mine who's been helping me behind the scenes, trying to do some research and stuff like that. Actually, the uncle's Zarika, I've forgot her name now. Zarika, the one with the, I forgot her name now because of the Z. The one she came to the
Oh yes,
annual conference.
is it Zarina or something like that?
Zarina, yes,
Yes, yes.
Uncle Zarina. So to be a guardian, but he's got different thoughts and stuff like that. But to Zarina, maybe in some ways similar. To be a guardian of modesty and virtue is to respect God. So this person, just to give you an idea, I think he didn't say this was wrong. He said he's over 60, he's very traditional. So to be a guardian of modesty and virtues, to respect God. Yeah, I suppose
Because
that's
you're
true.
following God's fashion guidelines.
Yes. And so the reason why I was thinking about that, thinking twice about it, is because what the difficulty, and the reason why I mentioned the 16-year-old, whatever, sometimes when you've been living a certain lifestyle, which is God comes first and you follow the rules of God, it's really hard to break that down, I suppose, into how do you tell a person who doesn't believe in God that is, those things are all connected and that's important and God's important. You should respect God and all this kind of stuff. That's why I was thinking about it. This is the reason why arranged marriages are the solution. So I agree with him a lot. It's just about how to express it to non-religious people, people who've forgotten, people who are living in our godless society. So I agree with him, but like, how do you explain these things is the question.
I suppose you could
So,
say that, God, if he, wants us, wants to protect us with his laws, and all these laws serve a social purpose to protect us from ourselves.
well, God is like he said he's the most gracious and merciful. Basically, he's the most kindest. He's essentially our real parent, because our actual parents are just mechanisms by which we were born, but they didn't do all the splitting of the, they didn't divide the cells and create our organs and things like that. So God just wants the best for us, is what I'm saying in short. So this is a reason why arranged marriages are the solution. So I agree. Where's a solution to modesty? Yes, that's what I was saying as well. That you need arranged marriages so that people don't feel the necessity to be immodest, because if you don't have arranged marriage, if you don't have a system to get people to get married, they will have to do something else, which is put their, all their private parts out and say, hey, I'm ready, I'm desperate to get married. So I think that's part of the package, arranged marriages. Parents will always act in the best interests of their children. And so why arranged marriages? Why not an app? Because an app is you selling yourself, usually by very limited features of your body rather than your personality. And arranged marriages, which is usually family based, people are more thoughtful. Parents are more thoughtful. Um, they are sort of barrier to the embarrassment of two people trying to meet each other. So it becomes just more mechanical, like, okay, this person's got this feature, he's got this much money, he's a kind person, he's like us, like downstairs we've got, did I mention off camera that we have a constant water problem,
Yes.
yeah,
Hmm.
and so that's a different kind of family, which, like, there's enough water, but I'm not like being rude about them, but just to get you a sense of idea of how families can be really different and have different attitudes, and you need to match those attitudes. So downstairs we have these people who just use up all the water that should last for a week, and they use in a few hours because they have this sort of mentality of, oh, we've got to get our money's worth of water, and then they realize that they can't flush the toilets and it backfires. So there might be like, oh, we're that kind of family who are really greedy. They won't say it that way, but like attracts like.
Hmm.
So that whole system, I think, really works. Um, okay, and so last bit, are we in the last bit? Oh no, okay, we're still on. Okay, makeup. Let's whiz through makeup. Maybe that's going to be obvious kind of stuff. So a lot of people think, makeup is just a thing you do. It just makes you look pretty, but people haven't really thought that through. So let me think. Let's work through some of these ideas. So why do women wear makeup if not to sexualize themselves? Why don't they, instead of putting lipstick on their lips, why don't they put lipstick on, I don't know, their earlobes, or color in their ears in red or something like that? There's a reason for it. It's not just because it makes you feel confident. Okay, it makes you feel confident for a reason, because you've decided to sexualize yourself, and therefore you've started valuing yourself in the short term through sexualization. And just to go through like the details, like more red lips. So if you put lipstick on, your lips become more red. Your lips become more red during ovulation. Um, so then my wife said, well, it's not fashionable to wear red lipstick and stuff like that. But the point is, there is a link to biology. There's a reason why women wear lipstick, for example, because they're sexualizing themselves. And maybe they do it subconsciously, through learned habit through their mothers and stuff like that. But there is, you know, something that cross culturally women do, which is they put makeup on, and I doubt. I mean, I think it's naive to think it's random. Do you think it's random that people would, there's no meaning behind red lipstick or blusher or putting foundation on? Do you think there's any meaning behind each of these different kinds of makeup?
Well, I mean, the blusher is to convey youth, because it's only modest girls who easily blush, and that, I suppose, is arousing for men.
Right, and so, and you're indicating fertility by indicating you're youthful,
Yes.
right? So these are, maybe I'm being very technical about it, but there is a very technical, boring reason behind all of makeup. So yes, the blushing thing is related to sexual arousal. When you age, the pigmentation in your skin becomes uneven, so that's why you wear foundation. Um, but back to the lipstick thing, people say, well, red lipstick is not fashionable anymore. What would you say about that, first of all?
Um, I think the first color of lipstick was always red. I mean, it wasn't
Hmm.
brown or purple. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess now the fashion might be for, purple or brown or black lipstick, but I think originally it would be red for all the usual reasons of indicating availability and perhaps also danger.
Interesting. And I would say the reason why it might have moved to brown or other colors, which don't really demonstrate fertility, is because people are less interested in sex, maybe. I'm sorry, no, sorry, less interested in having babies. So they're not going to demonstrate that they're essentially, or they're not trying to mimic ovulation, so they're ready, to make babies, because they're really
Hmm.
not ready to make babies. And it is true that the more you're on the pill, it ruins your hormones, so you're less interested in having children or something. I have to check that one, but I know it really makes you more masculine as well. So
Yes,
maybe
I think
that's yeah.
yes, I think that there's some rule about the pill whereby a woman on the pill would prefer a feminine man on some when she's not ovulating and prefer a very masculine man. Um, I don't know which
Yes,
period it
no,
is.
that's true
Something
as
like
well. I'm
that.
not even
Mm.
That's not even the pill. That's just through a normal cycle, I think.
Uh,
Um, the more like you're more interested in a masculine man because a masculine man can take care of your children when you're ovulating. That's how I understand it. I don't think it was related to a pill, but maybe it is related to a pill, but yeah.
mhm,
But anyway, but yes, in reality, maybe the reason why you fluctuate or women fluctuate between them is because actually you need a bit of different elements. You need a masculine man, but you need a reasonably kind man. Not
mm,
like brutal all the time. But you need brutality in the sense of not brutal to the wife, but brutal to be able to handle the outer world, as it were, to protect the wife and stuff. So then you got appearance of large eyes are a sign of youth. And I say it's a sign of youth because it's not really that your eyes become smaller when you get older. I'm really not like an expert in this, but apparently the collagen levels and the fat levels go down, and then your eyes look like they're sinking in as you're getting older. So in short, the point is that again, why is it that we wear what's it eyeshadow? Is because to kind of what's the word, accentuate your eyes, to make your eyes
mhm,
look bigger. So
mhm,
these are all there's no mistakes in all of these things. I mean,
mhm.
maybe that ruins makeup for some people, to tell them basically women are essentially telling everybody, hey, I'm ready to have babies, I'm sexualizing myself. I don't know, does that ruin it for women to know that all the mechanics behind makeup?
Well, I don't think it'll stop them from putting makeup on or blush or lipstick on, though. It won't affect them one jot.
Hmm.
And I guess, well, even little girls, they like the whole idea of, painting their faces. And maybe well, I mean, face painting is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
People just enjoy the idea of painting their faces. I mean, people who rugby supporters and football supporters, they like painting their faces.
Yeah, that's quite a different thing, isn't it? I'm not sure.
Oh yes, it's
Um,
not to be pretty, but to show
yeah, but I
commitment,
do.
loyalty.
Yeah, my 3-year-old already copies, her 16-year-old and 10-year-old, more like her 16-year-old, putting a bit of makeup and all that kind of stuff. So they like to copy that, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, let's jump to the last bit, which is Claire. Why don't you wear a headscarf? And it's a real, genuine question. I think it's when I say it's a genuine question, it's an interesting question. Let me put it this way: you don't like showing your face on camera,
Hmm.
okay? And the face you do show, is it called an avatar when it's not your real self? Like the self that you like to portray on all your shows is a lady wearing essentially Muslim hijab, a headscarf.
Yes, a
So
niqab, indeed.
niqab.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So and given that you live in London, and nobody would care if you wore a headscarf or not, I think, because London is super multicultural. I'm just intrigued. Why is it that you won't wear a headscarf if it makes kind of you would feel more comfortable with it, possibly? Yeah, go on.
Just because I'm not in the habit of it. But I mean, sometimes I do. I remember when I was dreaming, and I felt that I was having a bad hair day, so I put a hijab on and streamed with my hijab on. That was one of Jacob Faturecci's dreams. So
Okay,
yeah, I did do that.
yeah.
But I mean, just because I'm not in the habit of doing that, I don't. But I
Oh
guess
yes.
if my hair is bad enough, I might do it one of these days.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah.
or
Have you
wear a
ever
hat.
watched? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Have you ever watched one of those videos, or there's always these series of where Western women try out their hijab on the street? Somebody puts their, or and then they see their face in the mirror and they're like, "Woo!" Like, have you ever watched those videos?
No, no, I haven't.
Yeah, okay. Maybe. And so it's an interesting idea. You said like you're not really opposed to wearing, and the reason why I think the reason why I'm asking is because obviously I want you to become a Muslim. There's no hiding that anyway. But I think the other reason is that like we're talking about this whole video for the last 2 hours basically is about how we should change our fashion sense to make ourselves more, personally have better mental health and also create a more less sexualized society and whatever. It's all great, but then if you've got some sort of personal boundaries, it's good to know what those personal boundaries are that are stopping this healthy fashion revolution happening. So that's another reason for asking. So you're saying you're just not in the habit, but there isn't much stopping you, and you could easily do it if you wanted to.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's an
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
Yeah,
But I'm
and
more likely to, if I wanted a head covering, I'm more likely to wear a hat.
yeah, which you do, don't you, when you come to Speaker's Corner or something? But I
Mhm.
wear a hat as well, but it's a
Mm.
different. Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much as usual.
Yes, so well, it's been a pleasure and very revealing with more issues to explore as usual.
Yeah,
So
great.
thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Salam.